wabarakatuh. As Jim mentioned, my name is Faizan Syed, and I am the current Executive Director for the Council on American Islamic Relations. First, I'm very happy that everyone is here this evening. We have an excellent program planned, and I think you'll enjoy it. But before we begin that program, I wanted to tell you a story. And it's a story about an individual who's been lost in history, who's been lost in time, but yet his effect on the world is very deep. And that is this gentleman right here. His name is Samuel von Pufendorf. And he's a philosopher. And he's a writer that lived long ago. And one of the things he studied was natural law. And the study of natural law led him to read a book that was written a long time ago, which was called the Quran. And through this reading, he learned about the laws that are in this book. One of the people that he influenced was this gentleman right here. His name is Thomas Jefferson. And Thomas Jefferson, when he was in law school, he read the works of Samuel, and he read his books, and it compelled him to buy a copy of the Quran. And when he bought the copy of the Quran, he studied the Quran, and he tried to understand the natural law that was inside of it. What was written there? What can we learn from it today? And he is one of the people that found a very new nation, a very different nation, an experiment as it were. He was one of the people that signed the Declaration of Independence, and he also wrote the Bill of Rights. And this is, of course, the old United States flag. And one of the unique things about the Bill of Rights itself is that many of these rights that Thomas Jefferson wrote about, that he included within this document, were actually influenced and were actually a part of his studies when he himself was in law school. So when people ask, what is the history of Muslims in America? Our history itself goes very deep. And it goes very much so in the beginning of the foundation itself. And of course, the book of Thomas Jefferson's Quran was used when the first man ran for Congress and he won. This is, of course, a picture of Keith Ellison. And he took his oath, not on the Bible that they used, but he took his oath on Thomas Jefferson's Quran. He took his oath on Thomas Jefferson's Quran. So this is our history, and this is where we go from, and this is sort of our foundation, where it comes from. And one of the unique things about the Declaration of Independence is that some of the language or some of the writing within the Bill of Rights are such that they have a mirror or they have an influence within something that's in the Quran or is in the Hadith itself. For example, the Declaration of Independence. It says that we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed with certain inalienable rights by their Creator, and that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And the Prophet ﷺ, his very last sermon, the very last speech he gave to the Ummah, to the community, he mentioned that all mankind is from Adam and Eve, and that an Arab has no superiority over a non-Arab, nor an Arab, and also nobody who's white has any superiority over a black man. And the only difference is through piety. Learn that every Muslim is a brother to every Muslim, and that the Muslims constitute one brotherhood. Nothing shall be legitimate to a Muslim which belongs to a fellow Muslim, unless it was given freely. Do not therefore do injustice to yourselves. So what the final sermon was for Islam, the final sermon given by the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, was the beginning, or was part of the foundation of the Declaration of Independence that started this country and started this nation. That some of the principles that actually developed this country were founded in this old religion, this ancient language and this ancient natural law. And yet, though these truths are self-evident, sometimes a nation doesn't live up to its ideals, and sometimes it struggles. So though this was the foundation of the country, sometimes a nation stumbles, sometimes a nation fails. Sometimes the experiment has to continue, and sometimes you don't live up to your ideals. And when you don't live up to your ideals, a problem has to happen, and a struggle needs to occur. But yet it's through these struggles that people had beforehand, it's through these issues and problems that we were able to create a more perfect union. Just like in Islam, we have this idea of jihad, the struggle that exists. And when you struggle to do something that's good and positive, then the outcome is better than what you had before. When people struggle to make the world a better place, though their struggle is challenging, though their struggle is not easy, the outcome of that is something much better and much more beautiful. And the story goes that on December 7th, 1941, an armada sailed from Japan across the Pacific, and on 1941 they attacked Pearl Harbor. They attacked the United States. And when this attack happened, the country responded in a way that's maybe obvious, that they responded with brutal war, but then they also responded by arresting, capturing, and putting Japanese Americans who were living in this country for 6 generations, not 1 to 6 generations, over 100 years. They captured these people and they put them in internment camps. And these were camps that are away from the society, away from the population. And they kept them there so they can be secluded and isolated. But yet, because this struggle happened, because these people were interned, just like we have an internment after the attacks of September 11th, but because this happened, the Japanese American community, they were able to organize. They were able to come together. They were able to work together, and they were able to change the country that they lived in. They were able to cause a difference within the nation they lived in. And they passed the Immigration Act of 1965. And the Immigration Act of 1965, this for the first time in U.S. law, ended the quota system in this country. Before that, if people wanted to come into the United States, they had a quota. So let's say 80% of the people would come from Europe, and then 20% would come from anywhere else in the world. But after they organized, after they struggled, they ended that quota. And you'll notice that the majority of us here, even our community here, the majority of us are here because the Japanese organized, and because they organized with each other, and because they were able to end the struggle, they were able to pass the Immigration Act of 1965. Our history and our beginning is linked up to the Japanese history and their beginning. And it wasn't easy for them. They had to fight, but they were able to cause it to happen. And this is how the Japanese worked to make democracy work. At the same time, we had the civil rights movement going on. In this country, though it was founded on the principle that all men are created equal, sometimes that ideal can't be put into play because of prejudice that exists within the hearts of individuals. And it was over 100 years later that those African Americans were given the right of freedom. They were still enslaved, either through overt slavery or through Jim Crow laws and de facto segregation. But it's during this time that we had heroes come up, such as these two individuals here, Martin Luther King and Malcolm X. And these people, they organized, they struggled together, and they worked, and because they worked, because they struggled together, because their people came together, they were able to change the system that they were living in. Because of their struggle, we are able to live in a country that has a better foundation of human rights and civil rights. Because they faced the dogs, we don't have to face tanks today. Because they faced the water hoses, we don't have to face the rifles today. Because they picketed and marched, we don't have to do that today. Because we are standing on their shoulders. We are standing on the shoulders of giants who came before us. And now we are living in a time where what they did is being threatened. Because they worked to make democracy work, but yet now we're living in a time where that foundation is being chipped away. Now, in 2012, we faced a decade where fear had become incorporated once again. Where profit is made through manipulating the masses to fear one group of people, one population of people. And people are now becoming organized against this. Whether it is a mosque being built in New York City, and you have people coming out and protesting, no mosque here, no mosque here. Whether it's a man who holds a hearing saying that all Muslims are already overtly or inherently extreme. We just need to find out the extent of their extremism. Or whether it's my favorite person in the world going to the Washington, D.C. and then holding a rally called Restoring Courage. Or whether it's a pastor in Florida who decides that burning a mosque, burning a Quran is something that not only should be done, but should be made a national holiday. Or whether it's 10 years later, after these attacks happen, that this prison that was open, that violated the human rights of people, is still open to this day. This is where we are today. This is 2012. And what this does is that the foundation that we're standing on, the foundation that was built before us by the generation of people that came before us, that foundation is slowly being chipped away. That foundation is being attacked. And yet, I see these challenges that exist today not as challenges but as opportunities. Though others see these as challenges, how can we survive in this world? What can we do? I see this as an opportunity. That now this is our opportunity to make a difference. So now we can organize, we can struggle, and we can make a country that is better than what we came to when we got here. That we can now create something better than what it was. And over the last year, CAIR-St. Louis has been doing just that, or we've been trying to do just that. And our logo, if you don't know, is putting faith into action. And whether that's faith into action is sending teams of people through Joplin, Missouri, a town that was destroyed by a tornado, and we went and took about 4 or 5 teams to help rebuild that area. And the people who saw us there, you have to realize Joplin was a place that a mosque sign was burned down at. The masjid they had in Joplin, the sign there was burned down. And then a few months later, the tornado happened, and then we started sending teams down there. And people would cry when they would see us coming, because they saw that Muslims were coming to help them. And then, of course, this is us helping them in Joplin. Or whether it's holding a rally during the 10th year anniversary of